Let's see if we're on. And if you are out there, please ask your questions, okay? So tonight we're going to talk about whatever you would like to talk about. And I have a couple topics in mind, but it's your night. So this is a question and answer session that we have every Sunday to have, give you an opportunity to ask questions about your personal hiring questions, maybe where you are in the hiring process, and how to get over the hurdle. It's very difficult to translate where you are in the process, and everyone needs to know where they are in order to move forward. All right, I kind of associate it to land navigation. If you've heard some of my other webinars, the land navigation scenario is that, if you get lost in the woods between points, it's very difficult to find the next point. So the key is to try to identify where you are on the ground. Once you know that, then you can find where you're going. But sometimes, we've passed the milestones, we've passed the small objectives, and then for some reason we just find ourselves lost. There's no other way to explain it. And it's very difficult to figure out where you are, but you have to know where you are in order to know where you're going. So that's what the question and answer sessions are. Now, I'll be on here for 30 minutes to answer any of your questions, whether that's personal questions or questions about those that you are helping. If you're a career counselor, a career coach, a resume writer, you're trying to help veterans, that's what I'm here for, to answer your questions in somewhat of an anonymous fashion, obviously. But sometimes you just need an answer to your question to move forward. And that's what I'm trying to do. So if you have any questions, please, type them in. There's a chat block at the right-hand side, and we'll go through them. Now, like I said, it's only 30 minutes. So if you have something that's personal in nature that you want to ask, feel free. Post it. All right. All right. So you're from Sweden. Fantastic. Do you have any employment questions? It's great to have you on board and watching and listening. This is it's great that YouTube Live has this option now because I can reach those from all over the world and help them, and that's what I want to do. And so, again, if you have any questions, please feel free to type it in the chat block, and let's see what happens. Until you have any questions, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to list some things that you need to kind of watch out for with your resume. And one topic tonight I'd like to really focus on is the term that a lot of people like to use, which is first ever. Okay? So I think it takes it's very important, and it's obviously somebody extremely special in a job who performs that job for the first time. The challenge, though, is when you write it in your resume, you really need, and when I say you write it in your resume, what I'm actually speaking of is I associate the resume that you have to the voice track that you're conveying as well. So, for instance, if in your resume it says that you've done certain things in your life, the assumption is you are probably going to voice those same items in probably the same way to hiring managers and recruiters. And that's one thing that I just want to make you aware of, that just watch what you say and how you say it. and from my perspective as someone who watches and reads a lot of resumes on a weekly basis, those resumes take on a life of their own. They have their own personality. And a lot of times the resume doesn't convey the actual person. Okay, so I don't, a lot of people that I work with, I don't know them as a person. What I know them by is their resume. That resume takes on a personality. And when I look at a resume, shape the resume in a certain way that's very attractive, then I want to hear from that person. Because really what I'm looking for is I need that person to be the same person that I'm thinking of in my mind as I'm reading their resume. All right, so here we go. Yeah, so it's a challenge. Do you have a question regarding that situation as far as employment goes? Look, I worked over in Afghanistan, and I deployed to Afghanistan, deployed to Iraq. And I know it's tough. I definitely didn't have it nearly as bad as a lot of the friends that I know. But there, if there's ways that we can work through those issues, then that's what I'm here for. Why doesn't America take care of their soldiers and do not seem to help them with the psychological problems after a deployment? So it's interesting that a lot of times what happens is they help, but the challenge from my standpoint is from the employment standpoint. And I'm actually doing quite a bit for the PTSDers. And in that aspect, I'm going to VA hospitals to work through some of those problems when it comes to hiring. And it's always a challenge, and the military's trying to work through those challenges. And so it's just one of those elements that people will have a difficult time with sometimes. And the challenge is not a lot of people know how to help the veteran work through the issue. But for the time being, so the questions are valid, and I'm obviously an American. I love America, and they do their best. Sometimes it's very difficult. Now, for me, I'm really just focused on the employment of veterans, and yourself. So, do you have employment questions regarding the friends that you've seen, or of yourself trying to get into defense contracting overseas, or anything to that, with that topic? If so, please type it out so we can see it. And the action in Iran, I don't know if it's right or wrong. That's up to the president and everybody else to decide. But as far as jobs and employment, that's my focus at this point. Because, look, when these guys return home, they need help. And what I try to do is I try to define the civilian world. I try to define what the civilian world actually, looks like from their perspective. I focus on translating military strategy and military doctrine into basically into the civilian workforce. So for instance, if you're deploying overseas and it's an unfamiliar territory, obviously, how do you prepare for that? I mean, the challenge is right now, it's easy, right? Because it's going to be an unfamiliar country. That the language is different. That there's a lot of differences. And so because that, then you implement your military strategy. Well, the challenge is, how do you do that in the civilian world? So when you transition out of the military and come back into the civilian workforce, what do you use? What do you lean on? I mean, everyone has to lean on something. What do you lean on? Well, my recommendation is to lean on your military knowledge. You know, when you went into a country that you were not familiar with, you leaned on your military strategy and doctrine to get you through that sticking point. You learned how to analyze the battlefield. You learned how to analyze the enemy. And you may have learned some of the language of the country you were going to. Well, you know, it's the same thing in the civilian workforce. Look, the civilian world, the civilian workforce is a foreign country. Just think of it that way. They speak their own language, right? They have their own culture. And now you must integrate into that culture to be successful. How do you do that? Learn the language. Translate what you've done into their language. Okay, so here's a question. What countries are relevant for a 35-year-old dad that wants to return home even after a deployment? Yeah, so, I would say there's a lot of jobs out there. 35-year-old, what's interesting is perspective. Is in the military, 35 years old is old. All right? I mean, there's no other way to say it. I'm pretty straight up, and hopefully you respect that. I'm just going to tell you how it is. In the military, you're considered old. Right. Yeah, you're about ready to retire. I mean, I retired at about 38, 39 years old. I was ready to just retire. The challenge, though, is when you move out of the military into the civilian world, you will look at the military in a different perspective. You will look at it from a different perspective, and you will look at a 35-year-old person who is retiring from the military or getting out of the military at 35 as someone who has an extreme advantage over everybody else. You have been more successful and have had more experiences than the majority of the world in just 35 years. I mean, if you really think about it, it's only about 15 to 16 years. And so you have a lot behind you. Now, if you can translate that and move in and embrace the civilian world and just think that you have 20, 30 more great years ahead of you, and, you know, how do you move forward? I would say that you're at 35, you're almost at your prime. You're not at your prime until you're in the 40s, all right? So in the 40s and 50s, if you look through history, is when the majority of successful people become extremely, extremely successful. At 35, you are at the prime. You are at the point in which you understand what you can do and what your limitations are. You know what motivates you. You know where probably you want to be, right? And if you didn't know, but you could identify where the opportunities are, you know you could be successful. I know that because you're in the military and you're 35. I know that right now. All you need to do is to have somebody say, look, these are the opportunities, pick one and go for it. And you can be successful. You can hit timelines, deadlines, you can backwards plan, you can achieve anything that you put your mind to. So the challenge is not if you can be successful, it's only what are you going to be successful in doing. And that's a tough question, I understand it. But, you know, a lot of my videos will talk about how to actually find positions that are aligned to your military background in any location in the world. And, you know, it's a long process, but, you know, for us that are military, it's actually not that difficult. We do it all the time. And we've done it all the time. And so accepting the method to find those positions is relatively easy. And if your aperture is very wide, meaning you don't mind living in where the job is located, then you should not have any problems at all. The challenge becomes when you settle into one specific location. And then it becomes a little more challenging, but I would still say you're qualified for about 75% of all jobs in whatever location you want to live. And I say that pretty confidently because I just know, as a military person at 35 years old, the majority of common jobs and common tasks that you've done, and majority of those common jobs and common tasks associate with a lot of civilian jobs. All right? And that's not even speaking of what your military specific specialty is. I'm just saying in general. All right, when we start getting into your specialty, then it just opens up even more positions. And so, I would embrace that and try to find it. Some of the positions that I would look for if I was looking overseas in any of those types of jobs is I would look for jobs that are listed as program managers, project managers, project analysts, and program analysts. If you search those terms, you're going to find a lot of positions. And there are a lot of different sites to look for or look for jobs in. But, for me, even doing a quick Google search or Indeed search for your particular specialty or, those items that you really enjoy doing in the specialty. That's kind of the key, right? Because, the titles of the jobs are going to change. That language is different. You're qualified for these jobs, but the job titles just don't make sense to you. And that is a hurdle you have to get over. But how do you get over it? Well, you have to kind of dig into the job description, right? So some of these jobs, when you read through them, you read through the job description and you identify with, wow, I've already done that. That's me. But the job title is so completely different than what you're used to seeing, you would not recognize it. All right. And a lot of times that job title will keep you away from applying to the job. So how do you do that? Well, you search the keywords of what you've enjoyed doing, as far as working with people, supply, beans, bullets, all that kind of stuff, right? Ammunition, supply chain, supervising people, things like that, the common terminology that you would probably find in the job description block. And then those jobs will pop up, and then you'll have to research them because the titles, you just have to assume everyone's using a different title. Every company's going to use a different title for the same type of job. So just assume that. And what you're trying to do is relate to the job description. When you're trying to search for jobs you're qualified for in multiple locations in different industries other than the military or the government, you're really going to have to dig into the job descriptions and then write down the job titles. Okay, well, this job description is what I've done in the past. Oh, that's awesome. What are they calling this? And you write down the job title. Right? You write down that job title, and now you have a keyword. It doesn't mean you're going to stop searching for the keywords, using the keywords that you've already searched, right? And that you found this job on. You're just going to add to that list with this job title that you found. And now you're going to see the opportunities expand. And if you do that over and over and over again, I will tell you, you will see so many jobs out there that you are qualified for. So let's read some of this. I know I want to do another deployment after, I believe that I'm, almost do you think that? Yeah, I can't say whether that's just up to you. That's a personal decision. I enjoy deploying And to me, it was extremely gratifying, um, to the point in which it was addicting. It was interesting because there were, you focused on your job, and you really focused on the job, and you didn't really have a lot of distractors. So that was a positive. And so it's addicting, because of all of the distractors, and I call them distractors, but they're not really. It's kind of it's a bad term to use because it has a negative resonance to it. But the reality is it's distractors. So, back home, a lot of distractors. When you're overseas and you're deployed, there's no distractor. You do your job, and and that's what you do. However, what I did was I decided, and whether this is right for you or not, it's really up to you. But for me, what helped me was I got to the point in which I realized my family did not want me to deploy. And that resonated with me. Up to that point, they were very supportive in my deployments. But at a certain point, my last deployment, I realized, and I could see it in their eyes, that they did not want me to deploy. But because they were behind me for our entire life, they would never say it to me, right? Which is honorable on their part, but I think I needed them to tell me. But anyway, I deployed, because that's what I did. I deployed a lot. When I returned, I didn't want to make them feel that way again. However, what I tried to do, and I understand what you're saying, but what I tried to do is I had to sit down and try to figure out what it was about the deployment that attracted me. Right? Okay, well, you make good money. You have a lot of, limited distractors. You're focused on the mission, that kind of thing. But I would say that what changed more than anything at that point in time was I decided to myself, right, that I made the decision, the energy that I still had, because you still have an itch. All of us have the itch. I know. Right? I'm no different than anybody else. I still have the itch to go, and there's just something about it, and it's in our blood. We're born with it, all right? You just accept it. We're all born with it. And we get that itch, and you just want to go. You just want to pop smoke and go. But what I did was I decided to take the energy and the drive that I used for those deployments, and try to figure out, could I harness that drive, the motivation, and the energy into something local, right? Into something that I could stay home. Could I harness that and make the same amount of money? All right. Could I harness that and do something that I could reach globally, especially with the internet? Now, right? I could reach globally. I could still have an impact on something much bigger than myself. And I could impact lives. But I could do it from my own home, right? I could do it from my own local location in the U.S. So I'm not really punishing my wife and kids, because now they get to see me. I'm not leaving them. I'm not punishing myself by sacrificing, and then, which leads to resentment. I'm not going to sacrifice. I'm going to stay here. So how can and I had to really think about this, how could I hone in that energy to figure out what I could do on an even more global scale without leaving my local community? And I will tell you that once I decided to try to do that, the whole world changed for me. And as you see, I'm online with you right now. This is happiness for me. I have greater impact than I ever thought I would ever have. And but I still have the itch. I'm not going to deny that. I still have the itch. Um, but I harness that itch, and I try to create something bigger than me and help people out. Right? That's what we do. So today, what I do is I try to understand people. Now we got a few more minutes, but what I try to do, and I'm going to answer your question here. The challenge is a lot of people won't touch any of those questions you're asking, but I will tell you that we have to do this for each other, and it's the camaraderie. This is what real life is, and the group of people you hang out with. And look, I'm not scared at all of your questions. Those are great questions, and I'm glad you're surfacing them because every one of us have thought about that stuff. And what I would do is, I would look inside and go, okay, you deploy, you go overseas. There's an energy there to help and do a mission that's greater than yourself. And what I would try to do is I would try to focus that internally into where you want to live. What can you do to help those who are going through the same thing? I mean, look, for me, I have the itch. Always had the itch. I've known everybody who's had the itch. So what do I want to do? I want to try to help folks, right? And I want to walk you through those discussions to try to hone in what really is it. And I would recommend this is if you're at a point where you're trying to figure that out, I've been there too, is write it out on a piece of paper. What do I really enjoy and what don't I enjoy? And those things that I don't enjoy, I'm going to list them. And then I'm going to turn the page over because I don't want to see those. But those are really on the range. Those are my left and right limits. I'm not going to look for jobs that I don't enjoy. But what was it about those positions that I actually enjoyed? I enjoyed the camaraderie. I enjoyed helping people. I enjoyed making a difference, right? I enjoyed having a lot of things going on at one time. I enjoyed being successful, all of those things, meeting timelines, things like that. Whatever it was for you, write those down and then look for positions that look for positions that align to that. Well, I would say this: the itch never goes away. It's not a bad thing. My belief, because look, if we got an award tomorrow, I'd be the first one with my hand up. Now, let's go. All right. Look, we're all born that way. There's certain ones of us who were born soldiers and will always be soldiers. Okay. You're born with it. You can't get rid of it. Don't deny it. It's there. I would say look at that as you have an advantage over others. You have an instinct that's inbred in you, in the blood that's going through your body, that gives you an edge. Now, obviously, you got to control the edge, but it gives you an edge. It gives you an advantage over others. When times get tough, that itch gets you through. All right? When you're looking for jobs, that itch pushes you. Well, it may push you into deployment. I got it. But try to control that so it gives you the energy to keep moving forward in the location you want to work. Okay? So you take that itch like I did and you say, this itch, I'm gonna hone in the power of that itch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the motivation, the energy, the drive of that itch, and I'm going to harness it. And that is going to ensure, it's going to push me to do the research needed on the civilian workforce. It's going to give me the purpose of getting up early in the morning to do the research required to understand the foreign civilian world that I want to live in. All right? I want to be with my spouse, or I want to be with my kids, or I want to be with the family, whatever it is, I want to be local. All right, this gives me the power now, the control and the discipline to do the required research in the area that I want to work in, right? So whenever times get tough, guess what? The itch keeps you moving forward. It's an edge that the majority of the world does not have. And it is literally what gives you the advantage over other applicants. All right? You just try to control it and harness it in a productive manner. And trust me, it will propel you over the hurdles that you encounter. Hopefully that helped. We're out of time now, but hey, I really appreciate you being on board. Like I said, I do webinars every Wednesday. This week is going to be a Tuesday, but other than this week, every Wednesday, it's from 8 to 9, and it's a topic of resume writing, I think, is this week. Every Sunday is question and answers. And so, again, like we did tonight, any question you have, surface it. That's what I'm here for. And we do all kinds of stuff with Battlefield resumes. And look, we've been there. We've done it. Everyone needs help. And including myself, I have a peer group that I work with who keeps me straight, and I want to be your peer group as well. All right, we all need that camaraderie when we're thinking about moving out. So, hey, I really appreciate it. And hey, if you need anything, let me know. All right, the itch, it's not a curse. Trust me. If you harness it, it is what propels you over the hurdles. All right, it is what gets you up in the morning. It is what makes you wake up. I tell people all the time, you wake up in the middle of the night, don't think it's a bad thing. All right, the majority of successful people have epiphanies at 2 or 3 in the morning. All right, so when you wake up in the morning because you're thinking about something and you just can't get it out of your mind, write it down on a piece of paper. That's not a bad thing. The majority of successful people, only get 4 or 5 hours of sleep. I mean, look at these guys. They wake up and the majority of their successful thoughts come early, dark 30 in the morning. All right? And thanks, Artie. Appreciate it. And so, don't think anything that you're doing is negative. Use it in a positive way. Streamline it. I'm telling you, and you will be successful. So I need to take off, but if you have any questions and you need anything else, let me know. Just email me. I'm on the website there, and again, it's my company, and I appreciate it. I love helping folks. If you need anything, just let me know. Anywhere in the world, I'm here to help. All right, please tell your buddies the same thing. So I hope you got a lot out of it. This will be on the YouTube recordings and on my on-demand as well. So I appreciate it. Sleep well tonight, and I really appreciate you coming on board and talking to me. I look forward to seeing you next week. All right? Thanks a lot, Artie. Appreciate it. Have a great night.